Main issue about the Cavite Mutiny of 1872. But before that, we will talk about what is Cavite Mutiny. Cavite Mutiny was an uprising of Filipino military personnel of Fort San Felipe, the Spanish arsenal of Cavite, in Philippine Islands on January 20, 1872. It consists of around 200 locally colonial troops and laborers rose up in the belief that it would elevate to a national uprising. The historical events has come some arguments. The first argument is from the Spanish perspective. The reports of Vidal and Izquierdo both implicated that the rebellion was an attempt to overthrow the Spanish government. In particular, Izquierdo reports that the Filipino clergy is behind the mutiny to rally secularization. Booth has originally reported that this plan was caused by the abolition of the privileges of the workers of the Cavite arsenal, which include the non-payment of taxes, of tributes, and the exemption from forced labor, but the two added several causes like the overthrowing of secular throne through the Spanish Revolution, the unrestrained press disseminating unclean propagandas, the books with liberal, republican, and democratic ideas, and the support and conspiracy of native press to replace the Spanish freers. For this is the reason why Gomborza on February 17, 1872 were executed by Garuti. On the other hand, in the Filipino perspective, for the Filipinos, the mutiny was a response to the injustice in the society. This bloody event, according to Tavera, was caused by the eradication of privileges granted to the soldiers and workers of the arsenal in Cavite as a result of Esquerdo's hard-hearted policies. When they found out that taxes and other burden have been deducted from their salaries, they rose in arms on January 20, 1987. However, after 2 days, the insurgency has been subdued when General Esquerdo ordered immediate reinforcement of troops in Cavite. In addition, Tavera reports that the friars in Esquerdo has used the mutiny to report a conspiracy of Filipino residents and clergy to abolish the government. This is the eve of the plan of the central government in Madrid to remove the certain powers from the friars in the government and in the management of educational institutions. In an article published by the National Historical Commission of the Philippines in 2012, these four primary sources has been considered and some bases suggested the following unvarying facts. The number one, there was dissatisfaction among the workers of the arsenal as well as the members of the native army after the privileges were drawn back by General Esquerdo. Number 2. General Esquerdo introduced rigid and strict policies that made the Filipinos move and torn away from Spanish government out of disgust. The 3. The central government failed to conduct an investigation on what truly transpired but relied on reports of Esquerdo and the friars and the opinion of the public. 4. The happy days of the friars were already numbered in 1872 when the central government of Spain decided to deprive them of the power to intervene in government affairs as well as in the direction and management of schools, prompting them to commit frantic moves to extend their stay and power. Number 5. The Filipino clergy members actively participated in the secularization movement in order to allow Filipino press to take hold of the parishes in the country, making them prey to the rage of the friars. 6. Filipinos during that time were active participants and responding to what they deemed as injustice. And lastly, the execution of Comborza was a blunder on the part of Spanish government, for the action severed in the ill feelings of the Filipinos, and the event inspired Filipino patriots to call for reforms and eventually independence. Indeed, the mutiny may have number of versions from both sides, but one is for sure. It has been a gateway to a number of events that led to Philippine independence in 1898. In short, without the Cavite Mutiny, the Philippine independence in 1898 would be impossible. And based on the primary sources presented or stated, for me, the second argument, which Filipinos' perspective version of incident, is I prefer to believe, in which, when we look back to history about how Filipinos were colonized by Spaniards and other countries and abused their rights and privileges, and happen as a reason for every Filipinos to fight back against them, to regain the justice in particular. The version I find the most credible among the versions is the version written by Dr. Pardo de Tavera, particularly the Filipino version. Now, isn't it because this chronicle is rooted in my nationality, because I am Filipino? I am by no means favoring these versions over the other. However, come to think of it, me as a Filipino, or you as a Filipino, would you really put your credence to a narrative written by a Spaniard who was accused several times of embellishing histories? I understand how important primary sources like YVS are, but they can also be untrustworthy. Why there are so much faith placed in his work when it has been stated from the get-go that the Spanish version was a distorted link to the past. He was biased against us. And although the Mutiny was not succeeded and a tragic, but it served as a moving forces that shaped Filipino nationalism.